We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph and Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 92a. On the previous summit, the Gemara had said that Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon, that Dover Shein Miskavin is mutter, and the Gemara now is in the middle of questioning that, because Shmuel says, Aval lo gacheles shaleitz, if one has a coal made out of wood, he's not allowed to extinguish it in order to prevent damage to the public. And the Gemara says, V'sal kadaitach Rabbi Shimon svir olei. Now, if it should enter your mind that Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon, afilu gacheles shaleitz nami, even when it comes to a gacheles shaleitz, one should be allowed to extinguish it in order to prevent damage to the public, because that's a dover sheino miskavin. He's not having an intention for the extinguishing. He really just wants to prevent damage to the public. It seems that he does not hold like Rabbi Shimon. Rashi explains, avalo shaleitz, he cannot put out one that's made out of wood. Debas kiboihu, because that is something that really is extinguished. V'isura do raisu, and it's an isur do raisa. V'ikir Rabbi Shimon lo mashkachas kiboy ela b'miskavin. Rashi says, if one is following Rabbi Shimon, extinguishing is only going to be a problem in terms of kavana, would be lasos pechamin b'kiboy. If that would be, if the person is trying to extinguish in order to create coals. V'tzarech lem, and he needs them. D'yamar Rabbi Shimon malacha shein etzricha legufa pater aleh. Because Rabbi Shimon says that in malacha shein etzricha legufa, the person is pater. V'chiboy lav tzorech gufo, and just putting it out, extinguishing it, is not like a tzorech. She hates tzorech lo, that he needs it. The halavai shelo ba'alav, he'd rather not have the fire at all. And so it's really a malacha shein etzricha legufa, and really should be pater. V'dami lemotzias hameis lesalko me'al panav. It would be similar to, let's say, taking out a dead body in order to remove it. He's not trying to take it into the other rishos, he just wants to get it away. The pater aleh Rabbi Shimon b'Mesechet Shabbos b'Perek HaMatzniya. Rabbi Shimon says pater in that case in Mesechet Shabbos in Perek HaMatzniya. Now already in Rashi, we'll see in the Gemara in a moment, already in Rashi is switching from Dover Sheino Miskavin to Malacha Shein Etzricha Legufa, which is essentially what the Gemara is about to answer. The Gemara now continues and says that when it comes to Shmuel, b'Dover Shein Miskavin Savar Lo Rabbi Shimon, by a Dover Shein Miskavin, he does hold like Rabbi Shimon. Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon that Dover Shein Miskavin is mutter, but b'Malacha Shein Etzricha Legufa, but when it comes to Malacha Shein Etzricha Legufa, Savar Lo Rabbi Yehuda, then Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yehuda. And the difference between the two concepts is Dover Shein Miskavin would be like the example on the previous Talmud. Someone is sprinkling the wine on the fires of the Mizbeach. He's not having intention at all to extinguish any of the flames. That's called Dover Shein Miskavin. There Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon. But Malacha Shein Etzricha Legufa, so let's say he's putting out the coal so that it doesn't damage the public. He is having intention fully to put out, to extinguish that fire. That is his intention, but it's a Malacha Shein Etzricha Legufa. He's not doing it for the purpose of extinguishing. He's doing it for the purpose of protecting the public. As Rashi said, it would only be in a very limited case that extinguishing would be considered a Malacha Etzricha Legufa. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Huna says, Nesachim shenitmu, if Nesachim libations become tameh, they become impure, Osa lohen ma'arocha b'fnei atzman, you make their own fire, v'sarfan, and you burn them. Rashi explains, Ma'arocha al haritzba, you make this fire on the floor, al haritzba ba'azara, on the floor of the azara, v'lo yotziam l'chutz, and the point is, don't take them outside of the azara. And the Gemara continues again, you make this ma'arocha b'fnei atzman v'sarfan, and you burn them, and why? Mishum shenemar, because it says in the pasuk ba'kodesh bo'esh tisarif, it says ba'kodesh bo'esh tisarif, the idea is in the holy, that's where you burn it in fire. Rashi explains, Mishum shenemar ba'kodesh bo'esh tisarif, beperek sheni de psachim darshin and haikra, v'chol chatas asher yuvo marbinon minei, kol psulei kodshim shemechitzaso ba'azara. We say in Psachim, we include from this pasuk all disqualified kodshim that's in the azara, shayu nisrafim bi'azara, that they should be burned in the azara. Kidduchsev, as it's written in the pasuk, ba'kodesh lo seyachel bo'esh tisarif, again ba'kodesh lo seyachel, but ba'kodesh bo'esh tisarif, in the kodesh it should be burned in fire. And Rashi continues and notes, Utzmiani, I have the following question, Lama sorfan liatzman ve'eno sorfan beveis hadeshen, why is he burning it in its own fire? Why not burn it together with everything else in the Beis Hadeshen? Shahaya ba'azara, the Beis Hadeshen which was in the Azara, Shabo sarfan psulei kodshei kodashim, that's where they would burn disqualified kodesh. V'nira be'enai, and Rashi says, it appears that the answer to this question is, Shehu davar lach, since we're talking here about something that is a liquid, sorfan liatzman, so you burn it on its own, shetei srifasan nikeres liatzman, that it has a recognizable, its own burning that's recognizable, shemhaya sorfan im basar, because if he would burn them together with meat, ein nikarna wouldn't be recognizable, sharei ein bohen mamish, because they do not have substance. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Nami Hachi, we learned in a brisa like this as well, Hadam, V'Hashemen, V'Hamenachos, V'Hanisachim, Shenitmu, when it comes to blood and oil and Menachos and Nisachim, that they become Tameh, Osa Lehen Maracha B'fnei Asman V'Sarf, when you make an independent fire in order to burn them. Amar Le Shmuel Rav Chana Begaditzar, Shmuel said to Rav Chana from Baghdad, Aisi li Be'asara, bring 10 people, Ve'em Aloch Kamayu, and I'll say in front of them, Nesachim shenitmu, that when it comes to libations that become tamei again, also lehen maracha b'fnei asman v'sarf, when you make an independent fire and you burn them. Hadron aloch kol hatadir, we will return to you parak kol hatadir. And this is the end of the 10th parak of Meseches Zevachim. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will now begin the 11th parak of Meseches Zevachim. And the parak begins with the Mishnah, Dam chatos shenitas al habeged, the blood of a chatos, if it sprays onto the garments of the kahuna, hareza ton kibus, those garments need to be laundered. Afal pi she'ein hakosav medaber ela ben acholos, and the Mishnah says, even though the pasuk speaks only about those kinds of chatoses that are eaten, meaning outer carbon chatos, shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, b'makom kadosh te'achel, it talks about eating it, but we apply it echad hanecholos v'echad hapnimios, whether you're talking about the carbon chatos which is eaten, the outer carbon chatos, or the inner chatos, which are not eaten, those are entirely burned, to unos kibus. All of those are going to require laundering if they get on the garments of the kahuna. And the Mishnah continues, Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Torah sachatos, and we learn from the pasuk, Torah sachatos, Torah achas l'chol hachatos, it's one law for all chatos. And the Mishnah continues, Chatos psula, let's say it's a disqualified chatos, ein dama ton kibus. Then the blood does not require laundering if it gets on the garments, and that's bein shahaisa la shasa kosher, whether there was any time when it was kosher, or vein shalohaisa la shasa kosher, even if there was no time that it was kosher. And the Mishnah continues and explains, Ezu hi shahaisa la shasa kosher, what's an example of when the blood has a moment of hechsher? That would be shalona v'shenitma v'sheyatzas, let's say it was left overnight, or it became impure, or it went outside of the Azara. The idea is that at one time it was kosher, was ready for zrika, but then something subsequently happened to disqualify it. What's the example when it does not have a shasa kosher? That would be shenishchita chutz lizman, and that's already a disqualification. Happens already, let's say, from the time of slaughtering. It was slaughtered with the intention of outside the proper time, or v'chutz l'makom, or the intention of outside the proper place. V'shekiblu psulin asdama, or let's say disqualified individuals receive the blood. In those cases, from that very moment, from the beginning already, the blood was disqualified. And Rashi explains, Shalona means lon dama, the blood was left overnight, v'shekiblu psulin as dama, or if individuals who were disqualified received the blood. And Rashi notes, v'lo garsinan v'zarku, do not have the text in the Mishnah that they threw the blood, to ha'afilu ksheira shenitas midama la'achar zrika, even if it was kosher, and then the blood got onto the garments after zrika al habeged, onto the garments, ein ton kibus, even there would be no requirement of laundering, kedamrinan lekamon, like we're going to say later on, prat lezeh shekvar huza, it would exclude a case where it was already sprinkled. And the Gemara says, Dam chatos, again we say that the blood of a chatos, it doesn't matter if it's an outer chatos or an inner chatos, it's ton kibus, the garments need laundering. The Gemara says, Vi Torah achas l'chol chatos, but if there's one law for all chatos, so afilu chatos ha'of nami, shouldn't that apply to chatos ha'of as well? Alom Matanya, why did we learn in a brayso, yochol te dam chatos ha'of, ton kibus, one might think the blood of the chatos ha'of requires laundering, Talmud lomar zos, it says in the pasuk zos, which is an exclusion. And the Gemara continues, Reish Lakish Mishum Bar Kapara. Reish Lakish says in the name of Bar Kapara, Amar Kratz, because the pasuk says Tishachet binishchatos hakasav v'daber. The pasuk mentions slaughtering. We're talking about those kinds of chatos which are slaughtered, and of course, when it comes to the chatos ha'of, malika is done. It is not slaughtered with a knife, and therefore that is excluded. The Gemara continues and asks, Ve'ema b'ne'echolos hakasav v'daber. But why not say that it's only by chatos which are eaten? It says in the holy place you will eat it. Aval penimios lo, but then we would say that the inner chatos are not included. Why do we say that we should exclude the chatos ha'of and include the penimios? We should say the opposite. The Gemara says, Ravi Rachmana Toras. Well, there is an inclusion. It says Toras. And so the Gemara says, well, if there's an inclusion, Ihachi afilu chatos ha'of nami, then we should even include, if that's the case, we should even include chatos ha'of. Mi'et Rachmana zos. The Gemara says, well, there is an exclusion of zos. And so the Gemara finally says, Umara Isa, but how do you know which one one to include and which one to exclude. Essentially over here, we have an inclusion and an exclusion. How do you know that you include the chatos apnimios, but you exclude the chatos ha'of? And the Gemara says, Mistabr, it's logical to say the chatos behema pnimios havale l'ribuye, that we should include the inner chatos that involve animals, shekain behema, shchitas safon, v'kabolas kli, because they all have in common with the outer chatos. It's an animal, it's slaughtered in the north, the vessel is used to receive the blood, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Beis Amud Beis.